Hi, I'm Georgia D. Clark, Director of Student Services at Bethel Learning Center. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about the assessment evaluation that we do with your children in the 4's class. Either your teacher has given you that document or will be giving that to you shortly. And following that, we'll have parent conferences. But before that, we thought maybe having an opportunity to kind of go step by step, you could see what we're looking for and have a better understanding of what it is that this assessment actually involves. So we've broken it down, and we've been doing this for many years. We've broken it down into 6 different sections: the social skills, readiness skills, communication skills, fine and gross motor skills, and music. Some of the assessment is just comes from teacher observation, and some of it is actual one-on-one work with the children. We have each child come up to us, and we work for probably anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes with each child, and we're checking the things that are on the evaluation form. So we'll start with regard to the social skills. We have the honor and privilege in working with your children and helping them to develop their social skills and the things that they need to have in place to become successful adults. We don't expect that mastery of that at age 4 and 5, but we are looking at their ability to take turns and to share. We don't see too much of that in our 2-year-old and 3-year-old program, although it's evolving. But by the 4's, they can take someone else's point of view a little bit more easily. Developmentally, that's correct. And so we're working on that. We're working on waiting our turn, negotiation, those kinds of skills that help us to be the kinds of adults that we want to be. So impulse control, those kinds of things. We check that, and we do that just as we observe the children as the year goes on. One of the other things that we notice with regard to the development of our 4's is that when we transition from one activity to the next, for example, from playtime to someone ringing the tambourine to do cleanup time, taking care of the responsibilities of that, and then transitioning over to the next activity, which may or may not be something like rug time. And can children self-regulate to be able to do that? With regard to readiness skills, we're looking at the kinds of teachable skills, such as their names, their age. In another category, a little bit later, we'll talk about addresses and phone numbers, the kinds of teachy school kinds of things. So we ask them about if they know how old they are. Children typically at this age will say their name is, Joey Smith, but they may have not differentiated that Smith is their last name and Joey is their first. So we check to see what knowledge they have about that. In this slide, I'm working with a child and she is identifying shapes. And those are the ones that the shapes noted on your form, your child's form, are the ones that we expect that the children this age should know. We also, as far as general information, are checking to see whether or not they know different parts of their body. In the top slide, I'm pointing to the little girl's wrist and asking her if she knows what that is. That is a more difficult skill than my saying, can you show me where your wrist is? So we might do it one of 2 ways, just to see general knowledge about the body and such. On the bottom picture, this little guy is being asked if he knows which one is the smallest circle. Can he point to the smallest? And then we ask them, what about the largest? Again, extending vocabulary. A lot of children don't know that largest means the same as biggest. So it's, again, comparative size and also inclusion of vocabulary. We often ask, so if that's the smallest and that's the largest, what would you call that one? And sometimes our answer is mediumist, which it is. We expect that children in the 4's are going to know colors and some of the teachable kinds of information. But concept-wise, you'll see in the top picture, we're asking the child, in this case, I'm asking the child to put the purple cube in the middle of the yellow cubes. So that's a concept, the concept of in the middle of, and between and over and under. So we have our way of assessing that as well. In the bottom picture, the child has identified colors when the teacher has handed him a marker, and now she's asking him to put that away. That is goes to one-to-one correspondence. If you look at little ones count, they have not acquired the knowledge of one-to-one correspondence. So they might count 8 objects and count several of them a number of times. But when children have constructed that notion of one-to-one, every time they put a marker in the box, they need to say that number. And that's one of the things that we look for as well. In this task, we're asking the child to identify uppercase and lowercase letters. We have that chart, and what we say is, I'm going to point to a letter, and I want you to tell me if you know it, and if you know it, we'll have you put a circle around it, and if not, we'll just skip it and go on. So this helps us to see, obviously not or in random order, which children know letters of the alphabet. Typically, children learn their capital letters first, and that's what they see more frequently, and then the lowercase letters. So in this case, this child knows 44 out of 52 letters. You may note that are some letters that have a little dot up in the corner. For some children, it's very difficult to skip, and we'll say, that's okay if you don't know it, we'll just skip it. It's not okay, and they have to put a circle around it. So that just tells us that although they circled it, they might not have known it yet. When we assess whether or not they recognize the numerals 1 through 10, it's not, although they are numbers, numerals, it's not really a math skill, it's more of a reading skill. The fact that they know that the one that just has a straight line down is a 1 and 9 and so on. So it helps us to know just how, what they're acquiring as far as that as well. We have also on page, it might be this one, whether or not they know their name and their address and their phone number. We don't expect children to know that at this point in the year, but later on in the spring, we will work on them learning their phone numbers and their address. And for the address, we're happy if they have the number of the house, the name of their street, and the town. So if it's 123 Main Street in Elmhurst, we know that that's helpful for the children to have that information, even if they don't read it and recognize it, at least to have it committed to memory orally so they can remember it that way. This little guy is sorting, and the teacher has put all of those items out on the table and said, can you put those into groups? Can you sort those? And that's something that in their 4s and their 5s, we do expect that they are able to do that. And I believe that this little guy has sorted them into jungle animals, bears, and sharks, I think. When we talk about patterns, we know that there is a link between children's understanding patterns and organization, numerical organization, I guess I'll say. And so although we don't teach this per se, there are plenty of opportunities where children see the patterns. Some of our rugs for rug time have a pattern of a dark blue and light blue in the rug where the children sit. In this case, the teacher has said in the top picture, I'm going to put one block down and I would like you to tell me the color. And the child says blue, and then orange, and then blue, and then orange. So we repeat the pattern twice. And then we say, if you were to put the blocks down, what would you do? And the child then will put blue and orange and blue and orange and repeat the pattern. That is an A-B pattern. And that's one of the easiest ones for children to learn and to be able to recognize. Something that is down the road in terms of difficulty is an uneven one. So it's A-A-B. So in the bottom picture, the teacher has said, I'm going to put those down. Please tell me what we've got. Blue, blue, orange. And there's a slight pause, and then blue, blue, orange. And then the teacher starts the next pattern, which she did on the blocks that are going like horizontally. And then she said, what is it that would come next? So in that case, the child put blue and then went around went around the corner and then continued the pattern. So it was 2 blue and then 1 orange. So the child has acquired the AAB pattern. And a little bit later in the presentation, we'll take a look at how that most children do that and what our numbers are on that. And this is another pattern, another opportunity of a child doing an AAB pattern with yellow and purple blocks. Something else that we take a look at and listen to is rhyming. Back in the day, many new moms or moms-to-be got nursery rhyme books. And so children were exposed to Jack and Jill, Humpty Dumpty, and such. It doesn't seem as though very many children these days, I'm sounding old, are exposed to that as well. So we do some rhyming in the 3's, in part of their curriculum, they have nursery rhymes as well. Oftentimes when parents say, you know, my child wants to read, she's excited about letters and numbers and reading in particular, we say the best preparation that you can do to help your child be ready to read is to read to them. So that's always first and foremost. And because they're looking at the pictures, they see that your fingers are going left to right and top to bottom, and that's the sequence of words as we read. It's also, so much of that is auditory preparation. So rhyming is something that helps, and because we're not assessing from the perspective of nursery rhymes, we say to the child in the first one here, can identify given words that rhyme. We say, I'm going to say 2 words, and can you tell me whether or not they rhyme? So we might start with cat, bat, and repeat it again. And yes, the kids, either they can hear it or they can't. Just see how they're doing with that. And then something like cat, house, and give them the opportunity. So that gives us a sense of whether or not they've got that. Providing a rhyming word is not as easy of a skill as is listening to identify if words rhyme. So for this one, we would say, I'm going to say a word and I want you to tell me a word that rhymes with it. And we might start with something with like cat, because there's so many words that rhyme with that. We might go with something like mouse. And sometimes we say, we hear mouse, house. Sometimes it could be bouse or couse. That counts because those words do rhyme. We're not asking for words that are actual words. But again, it's the child's understanding of the auditory part of reading preparation. The other one that we check is if the child can blend a segmented word. And that's not an easy skill, but it's one that we kind of practice and play with. For example, at rug time, at other times of the day. So that is tested or evaluated by saying, I'm going to say a word, but I'm breaking it up into sounds. Do you know what word I'm saying? And we might do something like r or b, at, and have them listen. That is something that's one of the last skills for the children to develop. And one of the reasons that we play with this is that phonetically, when they start sounding out words, when they're beginning readers, that's what they do. So if they can blend a segmented word and listen to that and be able to figure out what word, it just helps them down the road when they're sounding words out. With regard to communication skills, a lot of that is things that we can assess as we listen to them in their daily conversations with us and with their peers, and also listening to directions and following through. In this slide, this little guy has 3 rectangular shaped blocks, one that's green and yellow and blue. And I have them lying flat on the table and saying, I'm going to ask you to do something with these. Wait until I finish telling you everything that I'm going to ask you to do. So I'll say, can you build a tower as tall as you can make it with green on the bottom, yellow in the middle, and blue on top? And so then he, as you can tell, or you can't really tell because his hand's in the way, but he is doing that. And there's really quite a bit of of processing that the child needs to do to be able to complete that task. Order of the colors, which one's on top, tallest tower, there's conceptualizing there. So that helps us to see how they're doing with the oral directions. 3 objects in a given category is, can you tell me 3 things that you like to eat? What are 3 things that you might find in the refrigerator? Something like that. Describing an object requires the child to look, assess, and pick up different characteristics of that. The way that we do this is to show them something that they've not seen before. We have a little stuffed bear that has kind of a plastic head, and we'll say, can you just tell me 2 things about this? What are 2 things that you can say about that? And they might say, his face is hard, his eyebrows are brown, he has a vest. Those are just kinds of things, and that's just indicative of expanding vocabulary. Using past tense, what are 2 things that you did last night before you went to bed? Brushed my teeth, played with my family, wrestled with the dog. By now that there is kind of an expectation that they are using ED in past tense. And the 4 to 5 word correct sentences we can assess in our conversations with them and with their peers. The next items are ones that have a 5 around them, in parentheses, and that means that developmentally, children who are 4 or 4.5 are not really expected to be able to complete these and to have acquired this already, but our 5-year-olds have. So the first one is comparison words. And again, this is conceptual. So we'll say, think about this now and help me finish this idea. A dad is tall, but a tree is. So we're asking the child to put in relationship the height of the dad and the height of a tree. So they have to think about that. It's a very conceptual thing. Sometimes because kids play with ideas of opposites, they might say a dad is tall and a tree is small or short. But then I'll say, okay, let's think about that. So again, this is something that we do with our 5s. And then we'll say, a baby is small, but a mouse, and then they'll say smaller. Then we'll know whether or not they have conceptualized that skill. 3 unrelated directions are, again, it's a listening kind of activity. What I say to the children is, I'm going to tell you 3 things. I'd like you to wait until I tell you all 3 and then go do those. And I'll say, walk over to the door, hop up and down 2 times, and come back and stand behind your chair. And they're, like those 3 don't make any sense among the 3 of them, but that's the kinds of things that they get, unrelated directions. The last is opposites, which is fire is hot, ice is cold. Again, it's a conceptualization that we're seeing if the children are capable of doing, and that's how we assess that. Fine motor skills. We know that for some children, they love coloring, they love cutting. They will spend their free playtime doing some sort of a art craft type of activity. And then there are others who just want to be with the blocks and with the trucks and with the trains and they're not as interested. There's a wide variety or wide span of how the children are able to participate in small motor, fine motor skills. We do have them cutting. Sometimes we want them during free playtime to have a choice to do what it is that interests them. And yet we realize that there are expectations in their school career to come for them to be able to do that. One side note is oftentimes parents ask us, my child is not really that interested. I want him to write letters, and we sit at the kitchen table, but then we end up having a battle about that. And our suggestion is if the goal is to have them hold a marker, it does not have to be practiced by holding a marker. If they're playing with Legos, if they're doing tiny little things, if they're playing with Play-Doh, if they're pinching clothespins, those are all kinds of things that strengthen the muscles so that the child is able to hold a marker. So there's lots of other ways to do that to prepare for that skill. In this case, we're asking the child to copy what he sees from above. We're not interested if he knows the names of those letters. It's can you look at that and copy that and create that on your paper? We also, that's copying shapes. Okay, so we also ask the child to draw a person, and you can see on the form that we're looking for the child to be able to have at least 3 features, and they are all able to do that. This is not really a problem. And the legs come out of the neck, and sometimes they just do. These are the most darling, and some year I think I might put them all on a sweatshirt or something. Again, back to the small fine motor skills. This little girl is cutting on a curved line. We see if they can trace on a straight line, buttoning and zipping. We know that all children cannot zip their jackets at 4, but we work with them not only from the perspective of the small fine motor component of that, but also the responsibility of that as well. Down in our big room is where we take a look and see how they're doing with regard to gross motor skills. We have, our outdoor playground, and the kids have a lot of time out there. And we see that these are all appropriate types of skills for the children. If they hop successfully on their right foot, they may not have such an easy time on their left. I think it has to do with their sidedness. If they're right-handed, then sometimes one side is a little bit easier to manage than the other. Jumping and catching, galloping, those are all kinds of skills that are appropriate for the 4s to be working on. Standing on one foot, we try and do that ourselves, and as an example and a sample. With regard to music, our music teacher concentrates on activities where the kids are singing along. It's dancing, singing, it's lots and lots of fun, and we're just looking to see if the children are eagerly participating in that. Some of the teachy-ish kinds of skills things are working on rhythm and beat. They use rhythm sticks, and music teacher will have them clap or tap out rhythms and such. So it's just to see how they participate. On this slide, I wanted to show you that we kind of keep track. This is not this year's data, but every year we keep track to see where the children are doing, and if there are things we can kind of concentrate on within a play-based curriculum. One of the beauties of, I believe, of a play-based curriculum is that we wrap the academics into play. And so at rug time, we may be doing counting, we may be doing charting. So they're getting a lot of that, but they're still doing that within the framework of socializing and all of the life skills that they get when they're in cooperative play. So with the far left column under letters is the numbers of letters up to 52. The red column shows how that plays out for that class, and then the blue class, and then the far right column is the total. So for example, in the red class, 18 of the children know somewhere between 40 and 52 letters. So you can see that a large majority of the children in that class know a large number of letters. And then we've got some outliers in other places. We only put this just so that parents can kind of see where their child falls in. We're going to do another slide that talks about the age span of the children and the expectations. And I think it's important to note that everybody develops at their own pace, and we will have early readers and we will have late readers. And the research that I've been familiar with for decades is that by 3rd grade, pretty much that all evens out. And by 3rd grade, you don't know who it was who started reading at age 4 and who started reading in 2nd grade. So we want to make sure that we honor where the children are. We give them opportunities to look at letters and numbers and such. And we just kind of keep track of that. So this is kind of just a summary of where the children are for that year. As I said, this is not your child's current year, but your teacher will show that to you at conferences. With regard to patterns, that's knowing one or the ABAB or the AAB. And as you can see in both classes, it's a large majority of children who know both patterns. Numbers, as I said earlier, is really just numerals, knowing that a 5 is called a 5 and looking at a 7 and knowing what that's called. It's not really math, it's more reading, but we can also see that a large majority of the children know the names of the numerals. And then rhyming also comes up pretty strong, that the children can rhyme the components of that, whether it's them providing a word that rhymes with ours, or they're assessing whether or not two words do rhyme. So this is what we know to kind of help us not get them ready for kindergarten, but just to see where they are. And this is the typical age span. Again, this is not your child's class, but if you look at this, there's a large range, a large difference. Our youngest child being 4 years and 5 months in January when the assessments are being given. And then we've got some who are 5 years and 6 months. And that difference is probably accountable to the fact that this year there was a child who was doing another year with us. So that would explain why there would be that much of a difference. But when you look at where your child is in this range, it kind of helps you to know how things are going. And of course, keeping in mind that each child thrives and grows as he or she is ready. And so we can provide all of this, the fertile soil and the sunshine and the rain and the care. And then we have confidence that they are going to bloom exactly when it's their time to do that. So I would like to thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to your child's teacher. This just gives you a little opportunity to understand why we assess what we do and how that looks with regard to your child's individual evaluation. And thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions, you can find me as well. Take care now.